Hello, folks, and welcome back to GameSpot's coverage of the Electronic Triple 2016. I'm Daniel Dwyer, joined by Michael Mahardy and his standing chin. I love you, you beautiful man. Torben, my friend, we're here to talk about I was about to say Tobias Reaper. I'm not sure if anyone ever calls him that anymore. I think that got thrown out with the first one.
They call him that briefly.
Right, yeah.
And then it
like
ends badly.
Maybe one game, I don't know. Agent 47 has had a wonderful renaissance this year in the form of Hitman.
Yes, just Season 1, Hitman.
Hitman, yeah. Let's talk about that first of all, because there was sort of, I guess a bit of, as anytime you release a game in a sort of a non, just boxed copy there you go, there's a bit of confusion about it. Talk a little bit about, I guess, the impetus behind releasing Hitman as this like purchase and an episodic game.
So, this goes back to Absolution.
Right.
I was on Absolution. I was working with the guys who built Contracts Mode, which was the create your own target thing there. And we shipped it, and very quickly, as you always do with a game, you discover things that are perhaps not as good as they could have been, or things that you designed as diligently as you could, but it turns out that when you put tens of millions of play hours into it, stuff is not working the way it should be. The three things in Absolution that were kind of troubled were the disguise system that was maybe a bit too punishing, a little bit difficult to understand.
Right.
It was the scoring system that got a lot of flack because it was stupidly punishing. And finally, the contracts economy was just busted. And the problem with the way we built that game, the problem with the way we understood how to build games at that point, was almost like packing a trunk to go on a trip. Right. You stuff stuff into it, and you stuff stuff into it, and you get your friend to sit on it so you can close it. If you open that thing again, it's going to explode.
Yeah.
So we shipped it, and then we thought, okay, what can we do without opening this trunk again? And we managed to get the disguise system kind of fixed, but we couldn't touch the other things because it was just
too much.
Madness,
And the other problem with packing for a trip is that once you've hit your first waypoint, you realize you brought all the wrong things.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Precisely. So, a bunch of us sat down and we thought, what are the things that we wish we could have done? And we identified things like the ability to kind of go into a level and make game mechanical changes, like for example saying, okay, suddenly these guys are going to enforce disguises, or you can't climb the side of the building, or you have to do the whole thing in 5 minutes, but not knowing ahead of time what everything would be, but have like a framework that will allow us to inject new rules. You'll recognize these from escalation mode, this idea of complications. We wanted to be able to go back and create and inject new game design into levels, like new targets and new security setups and entirely new activities in the levels, which is what we've done with the summer bonus episode by creating the film set and Marrakesh by Night. So it was like in that scope of things that we arrived at this understanding that we wanted to have a game as a platform.
Right.
I mean, it sounds like an awful buzzword, but this idea that we could touch these things in a way that didn't require us to patch constantly. And that brought us kind of to where we are today, where we have episodes that come out and bring a new location and a bunch of setup. And we have weekly content drops of escalations or challenges or elusive targets that can really change the level. The one that's live right now in E3 actually goes into that back area of the palace where usually Decker meets Novikov and you break his neck and chuck him in the river. It's like one thing that happens there. We've lifted all of that out, and now there's a party there.
Right.
And all the people who could normally get in can't get in. And there's a whole piece of setup there. And our ability to do that, or even our ability to go in and do things like Marrakesh by Night that you see there, which is this much calmer, cooler, more welcoming Marrakesh, that is on this scale of things that we can do with this game platform that we've come up with.
Yeah, it's always interested me, the episodic structure itself. I'm always kind of skeptical about when I hear it at first, but in retrospect, this game just really works with it, because it, like, the way people talk about this game is so different than like when you talk about the earlier Hitmans. You play through the entire game, someone says, oh, I saw this is how I did this is how I completed this objective, or I used this disguise. But this game, it's like every single episode that releases is just under this really tight scrutiny, so then people really learn it, like the ins and outs. And that's really interesting to me when I come into work and I hear like Pete, our reviews editor, saying like, yeah, I just played this again and I just found this, and like you really learn it inside and out. I'm assuming that was your intention, maybe.
Yes, but it was, I think the big realization for me with releasing this game now is how it almost seems we consume games now.
Right.
When we release something, it's live and it's streamed and people have passionate opinions about it. And we watch this, and sometimes we're sitting there thinking, should we fix this like moment to moment?
Yeah.
And it's like, no, wait and see how it settles. And an example of this, in the Sapienza level, you can unlock this breaching charge device thing. You slap it on a door, you trigger it, it'll blow the door in, blow a safe in, that kind of thing. Game mechanically, it's a low yield, was a non-lethal explosive.
Right.
But people worked out that it actually had a very, very high physics impetus.
Okay.
So then an elusive target comes out, the first one. The target is the forger. At one point he walks out onto a balcony. So one of our fans works out that if he takes a fire extinguisher, puts it out in the garden on top of this breaching charge, triggers the breaching charge,
Kidding me.
the fire extinguisher smashes the guy in the face and kills him.
That's awesome.
In a game mode with permadeath.
Right, yeah.
And it's like, what?
What did you think as designers when you saw that happen?
As designed. It sounds facetious, right? But it goes back to the infamous traffic accident kill in A New Life in Blood Money, which was like at the dawn of YouTube, where someone figured out that if they went into the specific level and triggered a specific series of events, the target would panic, call for his backup, run out into the street, and his backup would get in their car, drive over, hit him and kill him. And it's like, we did not script that. We did not design that. It was like an emergent result of hundreds of hours of like abuse of the systems. And that led to contracts mode in Absolution.
Right.
And in many ways, it's informed a lot of the design decisions that we've done on the new game, which are embracing the fact that there is craziness. And we're seeing Sapienza running here. This is the film set. This is a superhero epic sci-fi movie being shot in Sapienza. The target is a film director. It's a lot of fun because he's an old school guy. He does his own stunts. He likes pyrotechnics and physical effects, and that's a dangerous
Lots of interesting ways
with
to kill
47 on set.
Yeah, to Mike's point, I mean, the Hitman games were one of those games that replaying levels was always fun. It wasn't like you were just constantly trying to get to the next one. But there also was this element of you want to see what happens next. So it was almost as if the game was sort of pulling your attention in two different ways.
Yes.
It was like, play with the sandbox, but also,
play
hey,
next.
see what the next one is. Yeah. So in a weird way, and again, it goes to like gamers don't know what they want, right? Because like people are probably saying like, I want to play a full Hitman game. I don't want to pay $60 and have to wait. But you've actually allowed this like the players to breathe and experience the level and play with that emerging gameplay and trick things and in a way that like the game has such a long tail. It feels like this game is coming out every 2 months or whatever because it's like a new thing. Yes. Did you expect that would happen, or were you worried that there would be a backlash to like, why are they asking me to pay for $60 for one level and promising me the rest?
Let's be honest, right? It was on us to prove that this was a thing that could make sense, that it was valid not just to wait for everything to come out. But I think you're on the money, right? People are realizing that they have time and they feel kind of liberated to go in and explore and discover the fact that everything in our games is built up around the context of the level, the progression system and the challenge. All of this is about mastering a level. But talking about liberation, that was kind of an interesting outcome of the escalation design. Escalations are like these little multi-stage missions where we say, kill a guy dressed as a waiter with a saber, okay. Can you also do that if you've got to hide the bodies in 90 seconds? Can you also do that if you have to delete tapes if they spot you? Can you also do, right? Kind of a horde mode for Hitman almost, right? But what came out of that is that it's liberating because there's no fiction, there's no reason why 47 is doing this.
Right.
It's mechanics, and the mechanics are fun. And going through a level and then suddenly encountering the fact that, hey, right, you can only carry this weapon in this disguise. Why? Have fun with this challenge. And it's liberating and helps, I think, it helped me, right, when I first played the prototypes of this to realize that, hey, the basic mechanics of this game are a lot of fun.
Right.
We do tend to kind of get locked into the fiction and the fantasy of this ultra-powerful assassin.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's, when we live stream it, me and Travis, our community manager, when we live stream it, it always goes south.
Yeah.
And, #Travis proximity bombs. But it's fun because it just lets you play with the mechanics.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Mike.
No, I was gonna say, like, to use a dumb metaphor, I was like comparing the earlier ones to like novels, whereas this is a collection of short stories that you can get attached to them individually, but then also like the overarching structure of the entire game is still interesting. Like there's that through line that kind of connects them all.
Yeah.
I don't know, that's been interesting to me since they started releasing.
It's also been, I think, key to the way we're trying to imagine our story and our development of the narrative in the game, because Absolution was an interesting study of the character in kind of like a particular kind of story, a very grindhouse, gritty, how many lives will you take to save one kind of high concept thing. Maybe not super approachable from the point of view of Blood Money, but with making this one, I think we made the decision really early on that we didn't want to do a hero's journey with the guy, right?
Right.
We wanted to keep 47 the stoic, cold guy in the middle and tell stories around him.
Right. Which is wonderful. Which is like, I always find it funny that there are 2 Hitman movies, because Hitman to me has always been like a cipher for like the player to just. It's like a game of chess, right? It's like all of these mechanics. So to me, the pull was never, and there are some wonderful moments throughout the franchise. Like just thinking about the coffin scene with the credits running and all that, and like Hitman 1 has some like wonderful moments in as well with like his origin story and all that stuff. But yeah, it's like, I guess you guys picked your poison. You went, okay, you know what? People notice it's a video game. Like the escalation mode is a perfect example of that. We know it's a game. Yes. Like we know there are some games where you shouldn't see the puppet strings, but it's perfectly fine in Hitman to know where those puppet strings are and then to sort of mess with them.
Precisely that. I mean, it's like this giant clockwork machine. And when you've mastered it, you know if you stick the thing in here, this machine will tear itself apart and your 2 targets will die and no one will be blamed and you can do it in less than a minute.
Right.
And that's as designed.
Torben, I could talk to you all day about this. I'm sure Mike could too. We have to cut this one. Yes. But before you go, when is the next? So is this technically episode 4?
Well, no, we call this the summer. This is the summer bonus episode. Episode 4 comes after it. This is the midpoint.
Cool.
It's out July 19th on your preferred console or digital platform.
Awesome. Wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on. Really
so
appreciate it. Best of luck with the rest of Hitman Season 1.
Thank you.
And best of luck with if there is a Season 2. I'm sure there is. People seem to be chewing this one down. So thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it. Thank you for watching, everyone. Make sure you get those questions in. Sorry, I was hogging Torben there for that segment. We've got Jason on in a second to talk about South Park, The Fractured Butthole. I know a bunch of people looking forward to this one. So stick around. Back in a couple of minutes.